right, hi everybody, David Fogel back with you, CEO of the Symphonina Foundation, back with another Symphonina Foundation podcast as we've had another busy week recording with the Budapest Scoring Orchestra for our upcoming album this year. We don't know the title yet. We'll let you know as soon as we know. We'll be recording with Budapest Scoring again very soon, and we're looking forward to that. But in the meantime, our podcasts have been a little short. Usually I'm doing 2 to 3 a week with you guys, but this week only one. And we're off to a good week, though, today, as we have Aaron Larget-Caplan with us, guitarist extraordinaire. Aaron, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
How's the weather in Boston today?
Today's cold. Yesterday was cold, but tomorrow's supposed to be warm.
Okay.
So it's not San Diego.
It's not, no. We just had a little rain here, actually. It's kind of unusual, but April showers bring May flowers, as they say. Or as the song says, anyway. Aaron, you have a new album. It's out, Guitar America 250, Revolutionaries and Rockstars. We're going to talk about that. But before we talk about that, since this is the Symphonina Foundation, I want to ask you a couple things. First of all, how did you get so good at guitar?
Oh, that's a great question. Lots and lots of practice.
I figured that was part of the equation.
Part of it. Espresso, a good chunk of espresso.
That's good. Yeah.
After conservatory, I went to the New England Conservatory. And at the conservatory, I got opportunities to play with choir, lots of chamber music. But after, I met a teacher, a Russian pedagogue named Dmitry Goryachev, and I knew his son, who went to school with me, Grisha, who's a fantastic guitarist. Mm-hmm. And I said, Grisha, who taught you to play like this? And he said, Aaron, you must meet my father. And okay. I met Dima and played for him, and he said, Aaron, you have one thing to fix. And I was like, oh, this is great. And for the next 7 years, twice a week, that is what he said to me every week. Aaron, we have one thing to fix. Aaron. And I figured it out after a while.
Yeah,
but
it takes 3 years to figure that one out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how long did you have lessons with him?
I studied for 7 years with him after conservatory, and he was very much just, like a super soft, wonderful pillow. You get in, you put your head on it, and your whole day just disappears. I would be with him, and he would grab my fingers lightly, and, he's like, here's how you create sound. Here's how we keep these, the 16ths have to be completely consistent, and you're good with one finger, but this finger's like, he taught me how to listen and really break things down outside of the academic calendar. So coming to classical music at 16, which is when I started playing classical guitar, I always felt behind, and I was always rushing, pushing to get ahead. And in college, it was very much, what are you playing now for this recital next semester? And we work on all that music. And then the lesson after that recital was, okay, what are we doing next? Like, okay, drop everything. Here's next. New semester, new year. We have to always have new things. And I understand that, but I wasn't maintaining my older repertoire. And I remember I played a big concert with all this repertoire, and Dima, about 3 weeks after the recital, said to me, Aaron, play me that piece. And I was like, I haven't looked at it in 3 weeks. And he would curse at me in Russian a little bit. I didn't speak Russian, so yeah, it was fine. And I started realizing there's more than this constant push forward. It's a balance of renewal, new technique. You want to go through all these old pieces and apply that new technique. And at first, I really was like, oh, within a couple of years, I'll be where I want to be. And now I'm still saying that years and years later, which is another issue I have to fix. But he was I'm grateful. At conservatory, I got to work with David Leisner. He was my main teacher, composer, guitarist, and writer. And then I also worked with Elliot Fisk, and I got to work with the pianist Stephen Drury, which was amazing. And another pianist who you may know is Seymour Bernstein, who was based in New York. And this is probably 2014-ish, maybe. Okay. And there's a beautiful movie about him called Seymour Documentary. Ethan Hawke directed it. And I had seen him give a master class, and I was like, I need to play for him. And I contacted him and sent him some videos, and he says, "You're a very formidable musician. You have some great ideas, but I'm a pianist." And I said, "Yes, I am aware." And I was looking for different ideas, especially with 19th century music, which on the guitar is vastly different than orchestral music or piano music. The guitar, it's kind of written for, we don't modulate as much. So I can play some Schubert, and there are arrangements of it, but it doesn't go through all the keys of Schubert. So it might be the first theme type of thing.
Interesting.
And so I wanted him to answer questions like, hey, this is the notation. What would Beethoven do? What would Schubert do? What would Haydn do? I mean, classical all the way up. And, it was just great. He wouldn't let me call him a teacher because he thought it was more of a kind of coaching, because we just had great discussions and confidence building. And that was pretty important to me at that time.
What do you think? Obviously, everything in life is important in terms of what it can bring to you if you let it. But in terms of being a conservatory or being one-on-one with somebody who's special like that, or touring and learning from doing and being on stage with other things, what are the things that you think are like the most important things to look for to learn from, maybe for someone else who's coming up in that position now?
Mm-hmm. I think all of those are so important in different stages. I toured with a fingerstyle Americana guitarist where we split the concert, and each concert we each played a piece together at the end of each half. And at the end of his half, he's like, "You're going to come out and you're going to improvise over this thing." And I was like, "No, I don't improvise." And he's like, "Well, you're going to, and we've already booked the show, so that's what's up." And I said, "Okay, well, baby steps. Can you give me some guidelines?" And he was very kind about it. And by the second concert of this 19 concert tour, it was like, oh, I can't wait for that moment. And that planted big seeds to more improvisation. And then I started composing after COVID or after COVID. Yeah. And that has become something that if you had asked me when I was in my 20s or 30s, I would have been like, no, I don't compose. I said that many times to people. I arrange, don't compose. And now I adore it. And so I don't think, like Seymour Bernstein told me, I showed him I had a bunch of Bach arrangements, and my album of Bach is dedicated to him. And he's like, "Aaron, this is great. I like these ideas. I like how you're pulling in from different sonatas or different pieces that Bach did and putting them all on the guitar, mashups type of thing." And he said, "But to be a full musician, you must compose." And I was like, "Stop it." But it is different. And I don't think composers know how to tell people this. It's a different part of the brain. I feel such a different sense of fulfillment. Yeah. And it doesn't mean I'm necessarily putting it out and it's getting millions of plays. It's just the act of doing it. I sleep so well at night after that, when I can sleep, or else I'm like, oh, I have to finish this. And
Well, I do appreciate what you're saying. I've enjoyed composing. I've enjoyed performing too, mostly on the piano, a little bit on the saxophone. And yeah, it's for me too, it's a different experience and a different joy, different pleasure in each of those aspects. Let's talk a little bit about Guitar America 250, Revolutionaries and Rockstars. I think I can guess at the inspiration. It's not too hard. But when did you get started on it?
I first started talking about it about 2 years ago. Okay. And I was not seriously warm to it. I'm not a flag waving, go, go, go type of musician or person. I've read a lot of history, and there's lots of bumps in that history. Sure. But I was intrigued by it. That's not repertoire that exists for the guitar. And so I really enjoy arranging. So I made a list of a bunch of songs that I thought could work. And then I just jumped in and started arranging. And when we play I did Star Spangled Banner. And Yeah, every guitarist, the first thing we think of when we think of Star Spangled Banner is Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock.
Of course.
And I'm like, I'm not doing that. And then I was listening to his. I don't have feedback. I don't have a whammy bar. So there's no comparison. So I knew I had to do something different. And in the middle of his, he quotes taps. Da-da-ding, ba-da-dum. And reading, it's like, oh, that was a sort of political protest at the time, height of the Vietnam War.
Yeah, that's right.
And I went, oh, that brought a different level of depth that when I was 15 and playing Hendrix, never crossed my mind. And so I quoted taps or I quoted Hendrix quoting taps. Yeah. And so I looked for a lot of music that I thought could fit, but so I have early pre-Civil War, like Star Spangled Banner, quite a few Civil War ones. I was very inspired by these writers and composers who were trying to rouse hope in the future of a country that may not survive the Civil War. Right. And the Julia Ward Howe, her Battle Hymn of the Republic, I always thought it was a religious song. I didn't realize it was part of the Civil War. Yeah. And, to sit in the guitar, there's one reason I want to talk to you so much is with a symphony, it's like a small orchestra and I can do effects. So sorry, that was noisy. I can make it sound.
It's totally fine. Yes. Okay. Right. Yep.
I can do like my opening of Battle Hymn of the Republic. So that snare drum effect, being able to change colors, harmonize in various ways. I remove the words, and a song, 3 verses of a song without words, it's kind of boring. So I had to think kind of like an orchestrator. Okay, I can put the melody in this voice. Now I'm going to move it to the middle voice. I want to reharmonize and have some chromatic lines moving. And I really enjoyed that. And then it moves to the more 20th century. I have Irving Berlin and George Cohan, which those are, for me, they were World War II songs. They're actually World War I songs. And I love John Cage. I have a whole album dedicated to him called John Cage Guitar, of his music arranged for guitar. And I thought, well, he did some pieces called Apartment House 1776 for the 200th anniversary of the U.S. And I took a couple of his harmonies and arranged those for guitar. And that technically was a project that I started 4 years ago. Then I was like, well, I should also have some Bernstein. Bernstein is like a quintessential American musician. And I took his West Side Story, America, and I found a great arrangement by Jorge Morel. And I thought, hey, nothing better than a Massachusetts boy writing a Puerto Rican dance about Romeo and Juliet based in New York. Like, that's an American story to me. And so then I had Alan Hovhaness, who was actually born or raised outside of Boston in the town of Arlington, and I've had some connections with his family. And I thought we should include Alan. Here's another person who has a very American story of fleeing. Their family fled Armenia because of the genocide and came to Massachusetts, had to move due to prejudices against Armenians at the time, and then went on to have this amazingly fantastic career with massive amounts of output, like 60 symphonies, a few concertos for guitar, and other instruments. And I got connected to him, and the family, I premiered a piece for choir and guitar by him, gave the East Coast premiere 2 years ago of that. And I thought, that's wonderful. And then I grabbed a wonderful work by David Liptak out of Eastman. He was inspired by Elizabeth Cotten, who was a kind of American blues Americana guitarist who played it upside down, who was discovered by the Seeger family. She wrote a piece called Freight, and it's a beautiful work. And so he was inspired by that. And I thought, that's what I love, is this music that's inspired by this history, but it's classical. It's written out. It's a gem of a piece. I asked Ian Weiss, who's a young composer, the youngest composer on the album. He wrote a piece for my new Lullaby Project, which is a collection I've been asking composers to write lullabies since about 2007. I have 80 premiered, 3 albums, 2 anthologies of scores, and I do all ages concerts, 12-tone, microtonal, polyphonic, tonal. Pieces you shouldn't hear the end of, pieces inspired by Adam and Eve. Ian's work is inspired by taking the subway from Boston to his home just south of us in Quincy, and the cha-cha-pa-pa of the train. And he's like, that's a lullaby. And he sent it to me, and I was like, oh, this is a good lullaby. I like this. But there's one aspect that was missing, and that was me. And I didn't want to compose a piece. Growing up in the 80s, I grew up listening to Paul Simon, grew up listening to Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
And so I arranged America by Paul Simon, and I took Eddie Van Halen's piece 316, not Eruption. It's an introduction to Eruption. Again, I don't have distortion on my guitar. And 316 is a lullaby he wrote for his son who was born on March 16th. And I thought, oh, that'll fit on this. And that's how we get to the Revolutionaries and Rockstars. And as a final kind of icing, 2 cherries on the cake, I asked the amazing violinist Irina Murisanu if she would do a duo with me. And we did an arrangement together of Adoration by Florence Price. And I thought, this is a beautiful piece of music. I didn't know it was by her, and she sent it to me, and I was like, oh, this is good. I'm arranging this. And I was like, oh, this is Florence Price, who never wrote for the guitar. Nobody's perfect. You got to give everyone their space. Right. And it's done really well since the album came out. I'm very happy. And then we have 4 tracks of spoken word. It's a very mixed bag of music, and I took all of the lyrics away from these songs, and I thought it would be really good to have words by American poets. And so I have a Frances Harper poem, amazing woman, Songs of the People, Civil War, Walt Whitman, Proud Music of the Storm, and then we did a Cage piece called Murau, which is music plus Thoreau. Cage took an essay of Thoreau's, and he took all these musical lines of his essays, put them together, and using chance operations, adjusted and changed the order. And so you have the sounds of birds, you have the sounds of the water, the leaves in the wind, and the whole thing is an hour. We only did 3 minutes because, and I got Jeffrey Leppendorf of the John Cage Trust to read. Oh. And then I did an amended version of the Bill of Rights called the Bill of Rights Amended. And I just subtracted a few words, added repetitions, thinking, how do we adjust our focus to this really important, so inspiring document? That's been pretty magical because the performances of these, I've asked if people want to come up and read while I play. Mm-hmm. And we've done 2 concerts like that. We just started the album release concerts, and people are just, oh my God, that's so cathartic. That is an amazing experience. I hadn't thought of it this way. And yeah, so I'm still a little floaty, honestly.
You mentioned these live concerts. I want to ask you, is there place someone can go for information about where you might be performing them? And what are your plans to perform as we come up to the summertime and July 4th?
Yes.
And beyond,
of course. I hope beyond. That'd be great. Yeah. My website is alcguitar.com, alcguitar.com. My calendar is there. It's being updated for the summer as we speak. Okay. And I am doing a series of concerts in Massachusetts, New England, in April. I have, I think, 9. And then I go to Oregon in early May before returning. And then I'll be doing a couple of concerts. I just found out where the orchestras are doing their July 4th concert. And they're like, will you come in and play 3 or 4 pieces? Because we love this. And so that'll be happening this summer.
Wonderful.
I have a couple tours for the fall, and I have a couple of days open still. So hopefully those will fill up.
Yeah. How busy do you like to be when you're touring? Do you try to tour as much as possible, or do you want to give yourself some downtime, or what do you like to do?
I could be on the road 2 weeks a month without a problem. Okay. But I've done, longer tours are just harder because I have to carry everything. Mm-hmm. I haven't quite got to the roadie part yet. Right. Okay. But I usually do a region. So when I've played in Southern California, I do the Highway 5, and I'll start in the south. I did that last year. Mm-hmm. La Jolla, Encinitas, LA, working up through San Francisco, all the way up to Oregon sometimes. So it just depends. Classical guitar, it's a great instrument. I can carry it in many places. And it's just getting people who are interested and want to hear something new.
Yeah, I guess maybe a final question for you before we let you go would be, you gravitated towards the classical guitar and not so much a distorted sound like both of our heroes, Eddie Van Halen, would do, or anybody in that genre, right? But I think let me put it this way: for me as a young kid, the first time I heard guitar that I like, wow, I'm going to do that, is Judas Priest. It wasn't a classical guitarist. It was
right.
But then as I started to learn guitar more, and it's true with like a lot of different music, you start to get the parallels between other genres, including classical guitar to, let's say, metal guitar. That's fine too. But I think sometimes you need an inspiration, like you did maybe for composing or improvising, to pick up the classical guitar, or to pick up anything, classical saxophone, maybe if you're a saxophonist who's playing contemporary jazz. What are the things that you would suggest that people do in order to push themselves to that direction, especially if they're younger, so that they get more broad exposure to things so that they can learn what it is they really do want to do?
That's a great question. I think listening to a lot of music and reading. I know for me, I loved Led Zeppelin. I was a massive Zeppelin fan and Doors fan. Mm-hmm. And so when I was listening to Zeppelin, I started reading about the people that influenced them. So that took me into the blues and all of these other artists that I had never heard of. I grew up in suburbs of Denver. It was not a hot spot for much of anything outside of kind of hair rock type of thing. Mm. And with like the Doors, Robbie Krieger, I found out, played some flamenco. And so the tune Asturias by Itzhak Albeniz, he quotes it in Spanish Caravan. And I was in my high school Spanish class, and they had Andres Segovia, Alicia de la Rocha, Victoria de los Angeles, not in the class, but on a video. Right, okay. And they showed them playing in El Prado Museum. And Segovia played Asturias. And I was like, wait, that's the Doors. And I was like, wait, I want to go down that rabbit hole. And so when I meet people who's like, my kid really wants to play guitar, I'm like, okay, great. Let's do some lessons. It can be a little frustrating. So maybe we do multiple, but shorter, and go to concerts, learn about the culture that we're playing. I love Spanish music. So I just delved into Spanish music and flamenco and the poetry. I love the food. I find food is a great introduction to most anything. And that was very helpful. And then I would go, because I went to concerts and people would see me a few times, I started to build a little community. And that was how I got around and met people. And whenever I see young people who are like, I sit in my room and I play, and then I don't tell anyone. I'm like, good. You don't have to tell your friends. You don't have to play for them. But you need to see what it's like out in the world, because to create music in front of people is very different than being in the studio. And it's an experience I can't teach in a lesson. How a person responds when they're playing, that fight or flight, oh my gosh, my hands were shaking. That's never happened.
Yeah, I forgot to swallow. I know.
Yeah. Yeah, saxophone player. I forgot to swallow.
Well, that was okay. So that reference actually is the first gig I had on piano. So after 30 minutes, I like, wow, my mouth is really dry. So but we get past it. But yes.
I think for all young performers, as music is the goal. For me, it's always been music. I love playing guitar, but I've always thought of it as as an instrument to make music. And I didn't want to be just a guitarist in the sense of I'll happily be on the cover of magazines if they still exist, but I want to play with other musicians. I want to explore. If I could play Prokofiev, I didn't start piano young enough to go in a professional way, but I hear piano, Prokofiev, Mussorgsky, all the Russians, Debussy. I hear all of these other amazing composers. What an amazing gift we have to be able to just, I'm going to sit down and read these notes and come up with something and, bring out these emotions. It's being an artist. Yeah. It's a massive gift.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Before we do let you go, you mentioned lessons. Do you give lessons?
I do. I teach privately. I teach online, and I am on the faculty at the New England Conservatory for their expanded education. I do chamber music and solo and occasional coaching with I lecture about being attitudes and approaches to a career in the arts and help out when I can, because I don't know what other option there is. If there is, I don't want it.
Helping is always the best option, Aaron. If people do want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Through my website, alcguitar.com. I'm on social media, Instagram, all of these as ALC Guitar. And YouTube, I have a YouTube channel, the same. And Smoke Signals, I'll look for them.
Guitar America 250, Revolutionaries and Rockstars. We wish you the best of success with it and your touring on it and everything else. We're going to listen to some more of your great playing on the way out, Aaron. And as always, if there's anything we can do at the Symphonina Foundation to be of help to you, just let us know.
Thank you so much. A real pleasure.